Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of One Vision, the FinTech Fuse. This is Theo, your host for this episode today. Joining us today is a returned guest, Neeraj, but now he is joining us from a different country. Neeraj Mathur, if you guys have remembered from, this was a conversation we recorded a while back. He was the founder of Savings Oak, and we were fortunate enough to be able to meet in real life in California. And Neeraj has embarked on a new adventure. So I am so happy that he had agreed to join us again and to talk about the latest and greatest with what he's doing, and then to share with us some unique perspective, the life of a traveler, literally settling in a cross-border in a different country. Hello, Neeraj. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Theo, and hello to everyone listening in. This is Neeraj Mathur. I recently moved back to India. I'm currently in Bengaluru, India, after almost 25 years in the Bay Area in the United States, and with my family also kind of moving here with me to be with my aging mother and to give her company and to make sure that the grandkids get a little more time with the grandmother.
So it is a perspective, I think, in a situation, I would say, a lot of us are finding ourselves in. I was recently just chatting with a good friend of mine, and because we are all approaching that age now, and our families, right? Our parents are all approaching the age where you want to be there for them, you want to spend more time with them, you want the kids to get more perspective, more experience with their roots and their family. I myself have similar challenges. We've been fortunate enough to be able to go back and forth, but eventually, I think it is a question in a lot of our minds. What do we do as our parents get older? Many of us are immigrants or children of immigrants. And that question is very, very real and valid. And so I want to ask you, because you mentioned you've been in the Bay Area for 20-some years, and going back to India, I use the word back in a very interesting sense, because for all practical purposes, the country has changed a lot since when you were born, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very different place from the time I was born, raised, and then having come back after 2+ decades. It is amazing to find so much progress in such a very different sections of the society in terms of infrastructure and everything, whether it is in terms of the space research that India has done over the last 10+ years or a decade, whether it's in the space of medicine or science and technology overall. And in terms of infrastructure, it keeps getting better. I remember a time way back when growing up, when internet was just coming, we used to have dial-ups. To be honest, I found here that pretty much in Bengaluru, everyone, you have 1 gig speed, whereas certain parts of the Bay Area are still dealing with the Comcast, and AT&T kind of still dealing with maybe 100 megs, 200 megs, depending on which part of the Bay Area you're in. So really remarkable progress. And one of the things we're going to talk more about that's just fascinated me is the advancements in FinTech. I still couldn't leave my house even when I was going for a run without the keys or without a $20 bill and a credit card and a photo ID for all kinds of various purposes, including security. Here in India, I can literally leave with my phone and my headset or AirPods and not have to worry about buying anything, not have to worry about ID or anything of that sort. It's just remarkable from a fintech standpoint how payment infrastructure has gone so far ahead in India than most parts of the rest of the world.
I did not have an appreciation of how other ecosystems, especially those in Asia, has leapfrogged until I got a chance to be in China once. That was back in 2018, I think, 2018, 2019. It was before COVID. And I was in Hongju in Shanghai. I couldn't, I could not buy anything without getting yelled at. and then I didn't understand what they were saying. And it was only after a few days, a friend of mine who's French, who speaks Mandarin, he was like, Theo, they were mad at you because you're not using your QR code on the phone. They have to handle cash. I'm like, where I came from, with using cash and checks and credit cards and anything. The whole concept of using your phone as your wallet was very new. Like, for sure, we've seen, but I did not understand nor appreciate the prevalence of it until I was literally in a cashless country. And I felt overwhelmed. I felt foreign. Like nothing made me feel more foreign, even though we look similar, we're Chinese. But I'm like, dude, I don't belong here. I felt like I was from a third world country for practical purposes. So, walk us through how it is like, because you mentioned you could go out for a run without any ID, without anything except just your phone. I remember recently when I talked to Monica, she said that everybody is cashless. Like even a small vendors on the side of the street, you can just pay with QR code. Is every aspect of your life cashless and digital?
Pretty much. I mean, day-to-day stuff, you can start your day. So in my case, starts the day with running. And what's fascinating being in India, particularly in the southern part of India, in Bengaluru, where I'm at right now, is you don't have to worry about bottled coconut water because you have plenty of people on a cart selling fresh coconut water that they'll open it up in front of you and you can drink from it in the middle of a long run and not have to carry tons of stuff with you from that standpoint. And everyone carries a QR code, right? They've got these small little cards that they will hand off to you and say, here, scan it and pay for it. All you're really looking for is making sure that you have network connectivity, which again, given the remarkable progress in India in the last decade or so with telephones and basically cell phones are prevalent everywhere, or mobile phones as they call it here. And as long as you got the network, you can actually just make a payment. Now, it's a different challenge for some of us, particularly moving from a different country here, trying to reestablish all that stuff on how to connect your bank account, getting a bank account opened, and all that stuff. We can talk about that in a moment. But once you have those things configured on your phone, it is so smooth and easy that you can start your day, as I mentioned, with the coconut water person, or you can go to a mall retailer, you can name the name brand stores. Everyone's got a QR code that they're either carrying those small cards or have it plastered on their doors, restaurants. And there's a lot of these applications that are there that actually give you discounts if you pay by a UPI, Unified Payment Interface, and Universal Payment Interface. And it's fascinating that it's how prevalent, pervasive, and omnipresent it is that you really, even if you forget to carry your wallet, and I do that now intentionally, just you don't need to carry your wallet, so why carry it? Digital locks are here, so you can use the digital locks to get in and out, so no carrying keys, yay running. All you need is a phone and go. And you can be out there going about your entire day without ever missing your wallet. And for those who are kind of wondering about, well, what do you do about your essential documents, say, for example, ID cards, things like that? Everything's here on a mobile phone. They have something called as DigiLockers, where the government issued IDs, whether it's your driver's license, whether it's your car's registration copies, your Aadhaar cards and your PAN cards, which is very similar to something like a Social Security card that we use back home in the United States. They're all available online and digital copies are acceptable. So if you ever get stopped, you can show that to whoever's asking for it if they're authorized to ask for it and verify, and you get on with your business without ever having to worry about carrying either currency notes or anything like that. I mean, my most amazing experience recently was driving. Yeah, I now drive in India, which is a whole different experience. Coming back and driving, not just the wrong side, but driving in India can be a very fascinating experience in life. And we were in a place where there was nothing. There's just a gas station in the middle of a road, nowhere, for nothing here for the 20 miles here, 20 miles there. And I was like, we need gas. We got gas and we paid by UPI. We got along on the way, bought some water and Coke along. And it's fascinating. I mean, it just, yeah, that I am just marveling at the pace at which this thing has come here and how it's made the life of people so much simpler. Because to your point, and I can relate with that, they're kind of not used to handling cash. They are also not worrying about whether a check's going to get cleared or not. The money's instantly there in their accounts. So that instantaneous aspect is there. And pretty much everything is now coming onto the books. So imagine going to a parking lot. So for those of us in the Bay Area or anywhere in the United States for that matter, you go to these massive parking lots when you're going for a Niners game or something like that. You're getting into these paying 30, 40, 50, $100 parkings, depending on where you are.
Oh yeah,
As
it's
if,
$100 here in DC.
there you go, right? San Francisco has a similar kind of a nightmare for parking. And all you're doing is you're not fiddling with your taking out your credit card or figuring out the cash or anything like that. All you got is you take out your phone, the guy's gonna show the card, you scan it, you pay it, it's seconds. We're not talking 15 seconds, 30 seconds. This is happening in a matter of a couple of seconds and you're done with the whole transaction. So, and given the volume of people going to these events in India, I mean, everything in India is very high volume, right? And the pace, the efficiency, the efficacy. Does it fail? Yeah, I mean, maybe in 10,000 transactions, one's not going to go through for some weird reason. I think they need to get better at providing the error messages back to the end user, but that's a whole different ballgame because it's failing so less that who cares about the error messages? But being a user experience fanatic, I'm always like, tell the user what just happened because they have no way of figuring this out. But most people are not worried about that because it happens so rarely and it gets done. I'm fascinated, as you can tell.
I can tell, I can hear that excitement from the screen. And I do appreciate not having to bring a ton of stuff when you're out, right? Just the phone and that's it. But and I can see the advantages, especially for small business owners, right? Because one of the biggest challenges they often experience, especially in the US, is the amount of time it takes to receive payment and the amount of time it takes to clear it, right? You always say, oh, the money is in your bank and you get access to it in like what, 3 days. And you're sitting there wondering, wait a minute, this is, and so we're constantly trying to juggle with cash flow, optimizing it, and all of that nature. So challenges. But what are the drawbacks, though? I'm curious to hear from you when everything is so digital. First of all, it's fascinating that they're able to get a country of this size to be all digital. Um, that was an immense accomplishment by itself. But what are some of the drawbacks that you've seen?
Yeah, so look, this brings to the point of, again, you mentioned about being a UX fanatic. I've also security issues come into thing, and I'll share with you a very weird experience that happened, but that the odds of that happening now I realize are pretty common. So from a security standpoint, lots of spam, lots of phishing. I recently wrote about it in the sense that you could get a message on your paying apps, whether you're using GPay or Paytm or what have you, you could get a message. And if you're not paying attention, this could be a scammer who could look like a valid retailer that you may be doing business with. And sometimes it's small denominations, sometimes it's large denominations. If you're not paying attention for a moment, you could just say pay. It is so easy to tap that pay that if you're in the motion, that you could just end up making a payment to somebody that you never intended to, and you just get scammed. There are some recourses to get the money back, but it is a very arduous process. And 9 times out of 10, most of these apps will say, look, the money transfer is instant. So you really got to be careful before you make the payment. So the way I look at it from my standpoint is if you were ever to get in that situation, odds are you're not going to get your money back. So you got to be really careful. So that aspect is there. On that note, I have a common name. So as long as I was in the US, it was okay. But when I'm back in India, I have a very common name. A lot of people with my name, they may have a different kind of spelling. Instead of N-double-E, they might have N-I or what have you. But again, just watching all that. Recently, somebody made a payment. This is just about a month or so ago. And they accidentally, they have a similar spelling as mine. They sent some money over to me accidentally. And it was not a small amount for Indian standards, 10,000 rupees. It's not a small amount that somebody just sent me. Fortunately for them, they found out about me. They could look up, I have my picture on my UPI and I've got the UPI ID and everything. So they were able to find out who I was. And this person reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I have made a payment erroneously and I want my money back. And my gut reaction, and it was actually so recent, I'd written about the scam and the phishing.
Did you think it was a scam?
Yeah. I really thought it was just somebody scamming because that happens a lot. What they would say is a scammer would do is they will send you, I accidentally paid you, and they will do this, and they will say, well, you need to give this money back to me. It never really happened. They just kind of, take money from you and never give it back. So I was like, okay, well, I looked him up on LinkedIn, seemed like a legit human being. So I said, okay, you got to give me your work email, you got to give me your work, all the information because I was like, I don't know. And then the bank actually, that's the first time I learned that, yes, it's instantaneously, but from a banking standpoint, it takes about 3 days for the money to really be credited into your account.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so it showed up in 3 days. That's what the bank told me. And this was with a very large private bank here in India. So I reached out to the bank and I said, can you confirm that this money did show up? They said, well, it takes 3 days. And eventually it did show up that somebody had given me that money, that I now knew that money isn't there. And so I got all the information about this person, waited for all the verification. I finally sent the money back to him. And but what I learned was like, okay, this person could find me because I have a lot of information about me available publicly online. Otherwise, this could be gone. And the one other thing that's very fascinating in India that from the West perspective, it's something new for me. I'm not sure how prevalent it is. Very new for me is most people here. Well, most is probably, I shouldn't say most. A lot of people here are on temporary phones, as in their number changes very regularly. And I believe I could garner it's because of the cheaper plans that come out that give you more access to the internet bandwidth and this and that. So people take the phones and change the numbers and so on and so forth. So 10,000 rupees is big enough an amount for somebody to have just changed their phone number and be gone and disappear. And that opened my eyes in a different way that there is a very high chance of these kinds of things happening that people need to be aware of. And when I think about people need to be aware of, one of the things that we've dealt with a lot in the United States, for example, was, somebody that you know very well from a phishing standpoint will send a message, I'm stuck here, I'm here in this country, I'm inside the jail for all crying out loud, help me out, send me money, right? And you would have a lot of the grandparents, this happened to one of my friends, a family, a grandparent worried about their grandchild actually sent about $5,000 thinking they were trying to help their grandchild, without telling their parent because they would be in trouble with their parent, and they got snipped out of $5,000. So I worry about from a risk standpoint the elderly, the non-technical folks, which is quite a large population still here in India. And when I say technical, I'm talking about technical literacy and being aware of these kind of very smart scammers who will actually take somebody else for a ride at any given point of time because they have no mercy. So I worry about that. And I'm always looking at opportunities, at least in my circle, to kind of tell people, look, be aware of this, right? Verify it. And it happened to me. So I was like, oh, I need to verify this, this, and this, and not just send the money back because somebody has given me a sob story. But those are things that at a macro level, I think are risky still. We can also look at one thing that really is a pet peeve of mine here in India generally is privacy is yeah, it's an afterthought. Actually, it's an afterthought after an afterthought. So it worries me as a security expert. I'm always worried, like, why are you sharing all this information? But it's there. I'll give you one example. So India uses something very fascinating, just like we use in many parts of the country, actually, almost all parts of the United States, or our tolls are going through different kinds. You put it on a beam and go through the toll bridges of the toll roads. India has something very similar called FASTag, and FASTag must be linked with a bank account. And when you cross a toll booth, not only does it show the license plate, which it should, that, hey, you have a valid license plate, and it actually shows you the name of the issuer, which in many cases is a bank. So if you're just there trying to look for identifying information for somebody, and I shouldn't give these ideas to other people, but you can tell this person, this license plate banks with this institution. I mean, if you really wanted to cause chaos from a social engineering standpoint, yeah, India is pretty ripe, and it scares me.
That is scary because it doesn't take much. I know that all of our lives are pretty much digital and out and open, but it wouldn't take much with the current technology that we have to piece all of these data points together. And like you say, you can create mass chaos. I remember this was a while ago, and I was working on a potential engagement with a new client in a different country. And they asked me to email them a copy of my passport. And all kinds of alarm bells came on. I'm like, first of all, wait a minute, emailing anything of that nature is really not smart. And second of all, like emailing a passport to a foreign government entity, I'm like, no, thank you. It might be a practice in some other regions, but for me, I don't know. It's just, I guess, it's different habits, different cultural norms, different, I don't know, but that gives me scare. And if you pass through a toll booth and someone shows you a bank your bank issue, that scares me.
It's weird. I mean, in that note, I think you're right about the cultural aspect to this. One of the things that again, you see the contrast between the two different worlds that now able to appreciate is the notion of social security cards. I mean, think about the moment anyone, doesn't matter who placed the call, you never share your social security number, particularly if you did not originate that call. You just don't. However, the equivalence of that, which is the Aadhaar card and the PAN card, which is one is about identity and the other is about taxation in India. But there is WhatsApp groups where people randomly just put stuff out. I mean, I have a very common name to be in India. I have also a very common email yeah, and so there's a ton of stuff that it crosses my email, which is filled with information that I'm like, why are you sending it to anybody? And lo and behold, it's reached to a wrong person to begin with, so even worse. But why would you share some of this information unless you really, really needed to?
Wow.
And but it's just, again, I think from a cultural standpoint, people think, believe, understand that without providing this information, they can't get anything done. And they have not been uh, raised with a way to think about, this is your ID, you got to protect it and really hold it. Like social security numbers, I mean, we teach our kids right from the get-go, this is a number. Other than you, no one should really know unless they really can tell you that they have a reason to ask for it. And here's 4 or 5 things that they can ask you for it. I think it's an education aspect. I've seen this a little bit in some parts of Africa as well, because the digitization has come at a pace where some of the other things that needed to happen alongside have not percolated as fast. There's also this notion that because digitization is actually helping easing my life, making my life go faster in ways that I like, so I have more time, that they don't want to stop to think, do I really need to give you this piece of data about me? But it's kind of more like, if I give this data to you, probably you'll stop asking and I'll get done whatever I need to get done faster.
That is very true. Education is definitely one big piece of it. The fun fact was that, I'm sure you know, so social security number, when it was first started, it didn't intend to be, they didn't intend it to be like the all out ID number that we end up having. I think we still need a proper ID number, because I really don't. I am not comfortable giving out my social security number. It's like the key to my kingdom in a lot of sense. And then you see all of the phishing, you see all of the cybersecurity incidents, right? That's been happening recently. Finastra got hacked, and that's a big deal because, you know, that company powers most of the top banks around the world. And it gives you pause, because as we move on to quote unquote digital transformation, as financial institutions partners with more entities, there will be more of the Finastra, there will be more of the tech companies, there will be more of providers that are not used to the discipline that is needed for a regulated entity. And it scares me to think about, with hackers and scammers being so sophisticated, right? How are our institutions being protected properly, and how are we being protected properly? Because I feel like we're not at this point.
Yeah, so there's multiple things in here that we can think about, and I'm not going to say that I have answers for any of this, because we as a society are still trying to figure some of these things out. I mean, we go back to saying no good deed goes unpunished. And what that means is every technological advancement that we've seen in the last 100 years has unfortunately been used for things that are other than beneficiary to general masses or human beings across the world. Doesn't matter US, India, or any other part of the world. And one interesting thing, going back to what you said earlier about, you know, Social Security in the United States was not the all-Indian security number that it has become, the national ID number. So I mean, it did originate purely for providing benefits to the elderly post the war. And however, what's fascinating is it's gone through enough transitions, and it's kind of gotten to a spot where it's generally now being protected, and there's enough guidance to people from the time you land. I mean, I still remember vividly my day 2 in the United States way back when, and I was asked to go to this nearby Social Security office to actually apply for and get my Social Security number.
Remember the little paper card?
Yeah, the paper card. We still have it. We still have it. And not just that. I mean, if you remember, I actually have the white and blue 4-page sheet where they talk about what Social Security and when do you eligible for it. But the good thing that I still remember out of that, I still have the original sleeve, is they ask you to protect it, never share it without anyone with authorized usage, and so on and so forth. The reason why I bring that up is that is the level of inherent knowledge and education that we need to provide everyone around the world as we go through digitization. This is not about India. It's not about certain other parts of the world. It's about providing everyone, saying you got to protect your identity, because fact is, Finastra is one example we've talked about. There's plenty of all these things that have happened in the recent past. Most of our private information is out there already. I mean, from a US citizen standpoint, all social security numbers have been breached so many times. I mean, Equifax to Finastra, at this point in time, things are out there. And more of us are becoming more digitally available. We're sharing more information about us, where do we go, what do we eat, all that stuff, right? That's happening. And if you don't share it, then you feel like everybody looks at you weird. They're like, what's happening? Where are you? So in that regard, Finastras are going to continue to happen. Unfortunately, there's enough things there for people to continue to do the things they're doing from a scamming standpoint. What we need to do on our side is educate the end user as much as we can, and ask them or educate them in simple ways to do simple things. So, for example, in my circle here that I've kind of made, I met a running group. Love my running group. We're about 350 people in that running group. And what I've tried to do is like change your PIN every 3 months for your UPI. Look at your bank statement. It's like, look at some of these basic things. Don't share your personal ID or PAN card or Aadhaar card or anything like that with anybody unless you think they really, really need it. And then find out what is the need. And don't send it. Just don't ask your older parents to share their information with any random person who calls them with a good deal about a new washing machine. They don't need a new washing machine. Why are they somebody calling them for a washing machine, right? So don't let them share. Like, share me with you, share your PAN card with me, and I will share you. I'm not making this stuff up, by the way. This is real life stories out here that I've learned in the last 12, 14 months. Somebody being offered new deals and share your PAN card, share Aadhaar card. I'll share this with you. I'll share. And they're, of course, are going after people, elderly and the ones that are technically kind of not thinking at the moment. So we need to be able to make sure that our end users are becoming more and more aware and just aware of these things. The next bit that you asked is, well, what can we do from a system standpoint? I have been a proponent of, from a long period of time, that cybersecurity is still not a boardroom discussion for most of the organizations. And it doesn't matter if you're in manufacturing or you're in accounting or you're in some random thing that you think, oh, we don't have in technology, we don't have this, we don't have that. Bottom line is cybersecurity impacts everyone. Not just financial institutions, not just people dealing with PII, PHI, personal identifiable information, personal health information. Finance or fintech is going to be pervasive. It's going to happen to everything. You're going to make payments because you want your payments fast. The customer also wants their salaries fast. Everyone wants the money that they are owed or need crediting fast. So there's a general push from supplier and buyer side to get moving fast, which means everything's going to be fintech, moving at a faster pace. So what that means is cybersecurity needs to be prevalent from day one before we are building any solution. CEOs should ask their security office, their CIOs, their CTOs, how are we going to protect it? And it doesn't matter what data. It could be, I was talking to somebody who runs a large scale manufacturing plants here in India. Very large scale, they're huge suppliers. and I asked him about their cybersecurity policy. He looked at me funny. It's like, what do you mean cybersecurity? I'm like, well, you build these things, and what about your designs? What about the data about your customers? Who ordered how much? Which material did you procure from the raw material? What pricing? All that stuff. Isn't that competitive information? And he just looked at me. He's like, "Ah, that's right. We don't have a cybersecurity policy." So I said, okay, so maybe when you go back, you should have a conversation with your people who are leading your tech to do something about it. He says, well, my tech is run by a third party. It's like, okay, who does your payroll? Third party. Who does this? Third party. I was like, okay, great. Well, maybe you should actually have a conversation with the third parties and ask them about it. The volley wishes to say, by the way, thank you for that pointer, because we found out that one of our suppliers that we were procuring stuff from was telling somebody else about that we were getting a better price than them. And so I was like, okay, well, glad. I mean, it's good for you. And he says, very thankful. He says, can you help me with this? I said, that's not my, I just want more people to be aware of because they're not thinking in those terms and how it could impact their business, because he was taking a loss for some of this stuff. Perhaps didn't ask for details, so I mean, so something to be aware of. So cybersecurity being a boardroom notion, continuing to put more money into cybersecurity, helping people understand it, and at the same time, I think this is very, very important. We've said this for a long period of time. I remember, preaching this for so long. Pretty much every institution at some point of time is going to get breached. It's going to happen. So as much as you want to try and protect it, it's going to happen. So the next best thing is putting guardrails in place to, as soon as you find out, how do you curtail it? How do you make sure you respond to it? And how quickly you can get up and make sure your users are actually not dealing with the impact of it, is what a policy needs to be in place. And I'm not sure if everyone has it. Well, forget everyone. I'm not sure a large number of companies around it have it. I hate to pick up Finastras and the Equifax of the world, because I come from the security side, and I can tell you there isn't a CISO or a CTO or a CEO that kind of goes on saying, yeah, I'm going to be responsible for leaking the data of my customers today because I just want to. Doesn't happen like that. They try to do their best. They're competing priorities. That's why it needs to be a priority.
I agree. That was actually the reason why I brought up Finastra, because with the latest security incident, apparently the hackers were in that system for a week before they found out. Right. So a lot of things can happen in a week. And all they need to do is find an entry point, and the rest is history. So I think you might have just found yourself a new business model to operate in India that will make you indispensable, because, and you are absolutely right? Cybersecurity, safeguarding your most important assets should be and has to be a boardroom discussion. It has to take priority, especially with the amount of tools that we have available at everyone's disposal. Tech can have a good and a bad side. We always know about that. There's duality of technology. We can use it to do an immense amount of good, make things more efficient, help people learn better, connect better. But then on the flip side, bad actors can also use that to exploit people. I mean, they go where money goes, right? That's the end of the day, right? That's the thing. And I wish more people would heed your advice, Neeraj, and I can't wait to see what else is going to happen next with you. We need to keep this, because this is absolutely fascinating. I always look at India from outside, and never been, and I'm like, oh my God, everything is digital, everything is so efficient, and the UPI system is amazing, is being exported out to other countries, right? Africa. There are a few nations that are looking at bringing in the infrastructure and doing the same thing you guys do. It's amazing. It's an amazing world.
Yep, it's fascinating, and I'm happy to be here to be part of it in a small way, see where things go. And I just continue to marvel at innovation that's happening in the fintech space. And I find myself very curious being at fintech, cybersecurity, and then we didn't touch the biggest elephant, and we'll save it for the next time, on artificial intelligence and how that is going to have a whole different uh, impact in positive as well as interesting ways, as I like to call it, and to see where that goes.
We need to take a deep breath on that because I think there are lots to explore. And please do keep writing. So
Yes.
for the listeners who are curious about your writing, you have started writing a few months ago. I noticed that. Where do we find your work? LinkedIn?
I am LinkedIn and my website, neerajmathur.com. And that's where I'm at. And I'm also on Blue Sky now. So if everyone's wild, that's where I'll be posting more often. And yeah, thank you for reading. If anybody's any comments, I would love to hear back directly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, my friend. Lovely to see you. Hopefully, we'll reconnect in real life in a different part of the world. Until then, for all of the listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision. We'll talk to you all next week.